One. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everybody today to a special session of Lunch with Layne, and we're joined by my good and great friend and legal idol, Jamie-Owen. And Jamie is an attorney in public service lawyer, I should say, a fellow one at UCF Student Legal Services. And just a quick bio, if that's okay, Jamie. You received your
Sure.
JD from Northwestern University School of Law in 2009, your Bachelor of Arts from the University of Miami, and prior to joining UCF, she was a staff attorney at Legal Advocacy Center of Central Florida, representing indigent and disabled persons across Central Florida. She's admitted to practice in Florida in the Middle District of the U.S. District Court. So, both admitted in both state and federal courts here in Florida. And Jamie, I'm going to do a very quick disclaimer and we will get
Okay.
started, okay?
Sounds
And the
good.
usual one that I know you've heard me do
hmm
before. Jamie and I are not speaking on behalf of the University of Florida or the University of Central Florida, right, Jamie?
No, no, not at all.
Not at all, including the trustees, the Board of Governors, Governor's Office, the state of Florida, or any of its associated entities. The opinions and the things topics we're going to talk about today are purely our own. And the other disclaimer I have to do, quick trigger warning, if anybody finds this upsetting or intellectually challenging to engage with in any way, viewing is definitely not mandatory, and you're free to leave at any time during this viewing. That being said, Jamie, welcome aboard. My good, great friend, fellow public service lawyer, Northwestern graduate. I can't
Oh.
say enough things here. Plus, on the national listserv, right? I do want to give you a special shout out, Jamie.
Oh.
You're the one that keeps us connected.
Uh,
You're very, very engaged, whereas I'm lurking in the background, always.
I don't know. Layne is too kind to me, but we're both members of our National Student Legal Services group, and um, I think uh, this is maybe a product of some of the conversations that when we went to remote last um, spring that we had about making sure that we're staying connected with students and doing some of this virtual stuff. And um, to the extent that I maybe poked a few people for that, I'll take that credit, but very limited credit at that point.
I also want to thank you,
hmm
Jamie. This is a big one for us, the Bostock.
hmm
We talked about LGBTQ plus rights, and really it was me kind of riding your shirt tail, so to speak. You're, much more
hmm
the expert in in-depth analysis, really, Jamie. I think it's fair to say that of that case and
hmm
how it's changed or transformed, right? A lot of the
Yes.
rights across the board.
Yeah, I think we're going to see some interesting things come of that. So, that case, for people who don't know, came out last June. That basically said under Title VII of the U.S. Civil Rights Act that people could not be discriminated against due to their gender identity or sexual orientation. Um, as defined as gender, because ultimately that was gender discrimination under that law. And I think some there are some companion laws to that that use similar language, like the Fair Housing Act and Title IX. So it's going to be interesting to see what plays out. I think we'll see some of that here in Florida with some of the legislation that has been passed. If Governor DeSantis signs it, I haven't been keeping up track on everything that's happened. And I don't not going to opine one way or the other, but I definitely think that's going to be something that's we'll be hearing more about, and it'll continue to develop. It's like every case that happens, Supreme Court says something, and then lots of litigation happens after that, and we don't really do that in our practice at UCF, but we try to keep abreast of it so that my dog's singing a song of his people. Um, it might be getting the mail.
Yeah, no, if your
Um,
dog can make it over at some point, that would be great
yes.
to see.
Yeah, the mail's going to come at some point. He's been pretty good, so I'll give him that. Um,
Pretty exciting.
we just try to keep abreast of it to let our students know what's happening, because we do have, a number of LGBT students at UCF, and I guess are considered one of the best schools for students that are LGBTQ. Um,
Thank you.
and
No, I want to thank you for your
Mhm,
service, to the community, particularly
mhm,
this community. I know you believe strongly in civil rights, student
mhm,
rights, transgender, LGBTQ plus. And again, I want to thank you for
mm,
the service. You also helped us. We did our first joint, right?
mhm.
Presentation,
Yes, we
UCF,
did.
ever.
Um,
And I so want to do another one with you, Jamie, if you.
yeah, I don't know what we're gonna have to come up with something
We'll come up
like
with something. Yeah,
but
definitely.
maybe, I think we still have yet to see what's gonna come of some of these leases from COVID, so
Oh
maybe
gosh,
maybe
yeah.
we'll have some good information to share with students from that, but
Absolutely.
we'll
Working
see.
our way through that right now.
Yes, yeah,
Um,
still just starting to hear some stuff, so we'll see what happens. Um,
Absolutely. Jamie, let me begin. I always like to ask everybody, a little bit about your educational career. And I know you went to University of Miami.
yes.
I'm going to give you a quick shout out because I love English literature as well. English literature and political science major,
Yes,
right?
yes,
And yeah, and your journey to really one of the very respected, esteemed law schools. I know, but it's true. Northwestern.
um,
A lot of my students aspire to go there, so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about
okay.
that. If you can tell us about your journey there.
Sure. So I'm a first generation college student. My parents are high school grads, but that's it. And my grandparents weren't even that. My dad likes to remind me that I'm only a couple generations removed from Depression era farmers, or, people coming off the boat through Ellis Island.
Yeah.
Um, so um, that, kind of is where I came from. I went to the University of Miami. Um, I went to public schools and high school did pretty well, and so um, wasn't really sure. I applied there, and I liked that it's a little bit of a smaller school. And I guess at that time, I was very excited that it was in Miami and in South Florida, and there's always a lot going on there. Um, and now with retrospect, say the city is not my favorite. The traffic is horrible, is the worst. But the food is really good, and the school is was great. You know, there are some advantages to going to a large school like UF or UCF where you have Student Legal Services, for example. We don't have that at the University of Miami, um, but it was much smaller. So, like, one of the deans taught some of my English classes.
Wow.
So, it was the one time I had some sort of issue on my transcript, it was very easy to get fixed because I just went and saw her. It was for one of her classes and she took care of it for me. Um,
Nice.
so, and you're in Miami, and the University of Miami hosted the was it first presidential debate, I believe, for the 2004 elections. So there was a lot of really exciting stuff going on.
With
Duh.
John Kerry and George W. Bush, am I right about that?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, correct. Um, and Donna Shalala, who had served in the Clinton administration, is now representative, U.S. Representative Donna Shalala, was the University of Miami's president at the time. Um, so there was just like, Janet Reno,
Oh,
who's now
yeah.
deceased, but at the time had been the attorney general under President Clinton, was there. Senator Graham, who was former senator from Florida. I'm not naming just Democrats on purpose, but these are names that happened to be in the area at the time. We also had like Mario Diaz-Balart, who still is in the House, and other people who come to campus. One of the Republican debates for one of the House seats was on campus, and we were there. So they're just, at the time I was very involved in politics. I did some work for a nonpartisan organization called the Council for Democracy. I'm not even sure it's still in existence anymore there, but a friend of mine had started it. So we were talking, like I joke that he got me on some sort of like CIA watch list because I was like calling all of these parties that you see on the presidential ballot, but nobody knows what they are, like the Socialist Workers Party,
Oh,
and
yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
get them to like give us political signs because we were trying to put up political signs for all the different candidates that were running, not just the main ones that you heard of, but the third party groups as
Right.
well.
Right.
Um,
Oh, and
so
there's
I'm
Green Party, what, Libertarian Party, the
libertarian,
Socialists, right? Is there a
socialist
communist?
Socialist Workers Party. I don't remember. I mean, it's been so long now. I'm sure on
Yeah.
some old computer I have, there's a whole bunch of letters to these different groups, and um, it was really cool to be part of that. And um, my dad was like a really big proponent at that time of going on to grad school um, after your bachelor's. And, because I had been active in these things and interested in law and interested in government, having been a political science dual major, which is much easier at than what it is at UCF, and I imagine UF. Um, Going to private school in some ways. I mean, I don't know if it's still that way now, but it just was a lot easier to get classes and be in majors, I think, than some of the what I hear from my students who come into my office now about the ways that they have prereqs, and it just wasn't like that then. Don't know if that's still the way it is now. It could be totally different. Um,
So
but
it's interesting, Jamie. I
mhm.
probably should put another quick disclaimer in, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that UCF Student Legal and US Student Legal Services is not advocating any particular
No, no, no,
party
no,
or
no, not
candidate or
all.
anything. No, the only reason I put in there is, but I do want to bring it back.
Mhm.
I really appreciate you sharing this, that you were very passionate and active.
Yes. And,
Um,
and and so then I went to law school,
yeah,
and a lot of my friends, or at least acquaintances, were going to law school. Um,
it
and
inspired you, right?
yeah, I mean, it sounded like a good fit. My sister at the time was working as a paralegal, and so she hooked me up. I worked a little bit for a moderately successful personal injury attorney in the Tampa Bay area for a little bit, just to kind of get a taste. And, um, I was like, okay, I'll do this. And at the time, you were hearing about. It was a really good time for attorneys. It was the mid 2000s. People were making lots of money. I think 2007 was the best year on record for attorneys for that particular time period. I don't know if that still is true or not, probably not. But
Wow.
as far as influencing my decision to go into law school, that was there. And I got on Georgetown on a Thursday and Northwestern on a Friday. And
Wow.
I had a friend who was a year ahead of me that was already at Northwestern. And my dad had also spent some time in the DC area, and um, you know, had experienced some of the things that were going on there, and he just felt better about me being in Chicago than DC. So influenced me to go to
I
Chicago.
I could see that. Yeah, Northwestern could use a person like Jamie, right?
I don't
Yeah.
know. I think they did all right without me.
I'm
But
looking at the beautiful mural of Chicago, right? The
mhm.
downtown park area there. Is that right?
Yes.
Mountain?
So I actually took this picture a few years ago, 2019, when Student Legal Services had their conference in Chicago. And this is the Buckingham Fountain behind me. I figured it was fitting
Oh
for
yeah, no,
today.
beautiful.
Um, to
I shared with you. Chicago is actually one of my favorite cities in the U.S.
Chicago's great. And
Incredibly
um,
friendly. People were living there. I
mhm.
thought it was wonderful. I ran the marathon. We raised
Oh, yeah.
money for our orphanage
Yep.
in China. So it was really fun, Jamie, like going and running the marathon there. Boy, I never realized Chicagoans are really into, right? The marathon, sports,
Oh, yeah.
everything.
It's a big sports city. So if you love
Really?
sports, like
Yeah.
there's two baseball teams, there's a football team, a hockey team, there's a soccer team, Chicago Fire. I believe they're still there. Um, it's a really big sports city. It's a really good city. I love Chicago. It's just cold. I mean, I'm born and raised here in Florida. I'd never lived where it snowed before, like that. So for me, it was like 8 months of winter. But it's a great city. Um, you know, I I have some criticisms of legal schooling and the cost of attendance, and I know we'll probably be talking about that
Yeah, Jamie.
further.
Yeah, I wanted to, and I don't know if this is a good
Mhm.
segue. Northwestern is not infrequently on. I hate using that term T14. I
Yeah.
don't even know where it came from, but let's say one of the. It is
Hmm.
definitely always on the top law schools,
Yes.
And I wanted to ask you the pros and cons, of Northwestern because a lot of my students are thinking about Northwestern.
Okay.
I see that on their aspirational school lists. So
Yes.
can you give us an idea of some pros and cons you
Okay.
kind of experienced?
Um, okay, the pro is that there's a caste system in, ever since the news world, US News or Newsweek, is it? US News and
U.S. News and
Reports
World
or
Report.
whatever
I
it
don't even
is.
know if it's publishing anymore, but yeah,
But there's
at least in
still,
terms of that, it is
yeah, there's still,
very influential.
started being a ranking system, which there wasn't always. That started in the 90s. So, um, it kind of started to put a lot of prestige on institutions like Northwestern, Georgetown, University of Chicago. Obviously the Ivies are always up there, but even like Duke is up there, Penn State, it kind of started to put a lot of pressure on them.
It,
So people in the know, when you tell them, oh, you went to Northwestern, it's like, oh, she must be smart. I'm not sure that's always the case, but
the,
it definitely has some prestige, and maybe you have some gravitas because of
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And
And
Jamie, that's the way I feel, when you mention Northwestern and everything, it's like, wow, yeah,
yeah.
Jamie. I mean, I feel that myself.
Oh,
I'm a product of UF Law, love it. We're number 6 now. Not that those rankings,
yeah.
you know what I mean. I think we all have
Um,
similar feelings about them, but yeah.
yes.
Um,
So I think it's good. And and to be honest, if you're going to go practice very elite law and you're going to be in federal court, it's going to matter.
yeah,
It could potentially be a
Ja-
factor.
Jamie, did it open up doors for you in terms of, was it worth, I'm guessing the costs are that much more too, right?
No.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so uh, I don't feel yes and no. So I also graduated from Northwestern in 2009. What was globally going on in 2009? A major recession. So that's why I probably say no, just because um, there just was a lot going on. On the other hand, when I ended up going back, I had interned at the Legal Advocacy Center of Central Florida and then ended up working there. Was it kind of like a feather in their cap to have gotten a new Northwestern grad? Probably. That it meant something, and did that make that easier? Maybe. But I don't. I think it definitely opens doors. Like, you're going to be able to get in front of the big law firms. So if your goal of going to law school is you want to go work for a large corporate firm, and we're going to talk about what that's like, so you really actually know what that's like. I have a lot of very good friends that now are in partners at those big firms or heading towards partnership or have left those big firms. But you know, um, if
Wow.
that's what you want to do, then you want to be at a big firm. You don't want to be at, you want to be at one of those big schools. You don't necessarily want to be at FAMU or Barry, which are our two local law schools here. I don't know how much UF sends to those big white shoe law firms, but it's probably
Yeah,
not.
it's something that I think all of us, because it plays into the rankings again,
Hmm.
right, are cognizant of. And a
Hmm.
lot of my students, they want to aspire, for big
Hmm.
law, that we sometimes call
Hmm.
law firms. I'm
Yeah,
looking on here. Thank you for sharing that, Jamie. And I wanted to ask about opening up doors. If I
yeah,
can share a quick screen with you,
sure.
and this is neither a shout out nor endorsement, but I'm looking at the budget for see if I can do this. If I can share a screen, is it? Oh, it takes a little bit longer. Okay, because we're
Oh yeah,
recording.
I actually was looking at that.
You
That was what we were talking about a little bit earlier before we
90
started recording.
98,000, almost $100,000 per year.
Hmm.
Is
Hmm.
that
The tuition is 90
yeah.
or 68.5. The estimated cost of attendance when I was there was somewhere in the 60s. Um,
And I'm
I
guessing, Jamie, you didn't make $60,000 a year, right? When you're in law school to be paying for law school, right?
Oh, it was loans,
It
totally
was loans.
loans.
Okay.
Um, I don't think I didn't, um, so yeah, so I finance that, and we can talk a little bit more about what the loans are like. But the advantage is that it's a lottery to get those. When you're doing summer interviewing, you get to say who you want to interview with. They don't get to pick you. Northwestern doesn't rank their students. Unlike some of the IBs, it still does, A, B, C, D. Some of the IBs do pass fail, but there's no ranking of students. So you really, I mean, you probably have some idea if you're in the middle of the pack or, um, you know, at the top, maybe of the classes, you might have some sort of idea about that, but there's not that sort of thing. I think Northwestern is a little bit more collegial than some of the other ones. We'd have a few professors that had been at Chicago and then came over to Northwestern, and it's just like a little bit more laid back.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that, Jimmy. Your law school experience, in
Mhm.
general. You're saying it's a little bit more laid back. You felt like,
Yeah,
yeah, was it
I mean,
friendly, welcoming, inclusive? I think my students would probably be asking, you know.
um, is it inclusive? Like, I guess what metric are you comparing it to? That would be at the time when I was there, it was still more men than women. I think that's not the case anymore. Now, more of the students. It was very close then, but I think now when I was kind of looking at some numbers, I think I saw it was like 52% female. Um, is it still predominantly white? Yes. Were there a lot of black students? No. Yes and no. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
percentage, but um, there's a fair amount of Asian students because you do get a fair amount of students from Asia doing their LLM. Um,
And
so you get a fair amount of Asian students at the school. Um,
got you. What?
Hispanic, some, it's I think it reflects maybe the population. Um, you know, I think I'm a lot more aware of certain issues now than I was then, but certainly there's a women's lawyers, there's the Black Law Students Association, um, there's you know, um, I forget what they call it now, but the LGBT Alliance,
Right.
um,
Right.
law student group, um, and all of those various different groups. Um,
I know Lambda Law and things,
mhm.
right? Also
Yeah,
sounds like,
yeah, I
yeah,
did that.
makes sense.
It's so long now, I just don't
Yeah, sure. It's okay. It's okay.
remember.
There's so many student organizations, but that's a good
Yes,
thing too, right?
yeah. Oh no,
Yeah.
it's great. I
Something
mean,
for everybody.
yeah, and that's how you can find friends. I had a good friend already there, and I think there's some pros and cons to that you're like, oh, I already have a friend. I don't really need to
Yeah.
make more friends.
Yeah.
I've got my group already set.
That's nice.
Um, but then you kind of go through it, and law school's tough. Like it's if you most people who are going to be able to go to a school like that, you know um, are used to being at the top of their game, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
You're dealing with a lot of very, I was going to say brilliant, let's be honest, brilliant, at least
yes.
academic individuals, right?
Yeah. So, those of us who are really good at taking standardized tests. I'm really good at taking a standardized test.
I'm
Um,
calling you Jamie next
yeah.
time. Yeah.
Oh, maybe not anymore. I've tried to forget all of that stuff,
Sure.
but at one time I was really good at taking a standardized test, and um, you know, so you're there, and so it can be difficult where you might not get A's anymore. You might not be getting A's, you might not always know the answer, you might have a hard time keeping up with the amount of work that you're being given. um,
Oh, one of the other, I think Jason Williams in another interview had
mhm.
recommended The Paper Chase,
Oh,
the movie. I don't know if it's an older movie.
Northwestern's not like
It's
that.
not like that. Okay.
No,
Yeah.
it's not. Like,
Gosh.
you could pass if they call, like, obviously it was discouraged, so there's definitely parts of that that are true. They're still using the Socratic method,
Did it make
where
you
they
stand up or no?
no, no,
Okay. Okay.
no. But I'm like, I blocked out a lot of law school. But you're still in that. You're still in a section with the same like 60 some people who you're gonna be in classes with, for at least for that first year, for the most part. Um, you know, and so, that's kind of how it is. And being at an elite school and kind of coming from humble origins, there can be some challenges to that, um, but there were really good things about it, and there were some not great things about it.
Yeah.
I think part of it was I kind of went in really kind of blind to what law school was going to be like. And some people had already prepped and had had their like little study guides already ready, and they knew what they were going to do, and they were um, so prepared. And I was like, study guide,
Right.
um,
Right. What's that?
because
Yeah.
yeah, it's just so um, foreign to me. And there's this whole industry that revolves around, law school and
Yeah.
all these, little crib guides and stuff for
Right.
all of the cases. And, learning a different way to think. It's a different way to write. It's a different way um, to deal with people. Um,
I still see, is it,
mhm.
at your bookstore, is it the same way? They have these laminated sheets, and once in a while I'll go down Anatomy 101, and they're little laminated sheets. And I think I've seen torts and,
They were more
criminal
like
law, constitutional. Yeah.
bound
The books are what you're
books,
talking about, right? Really?
so your case book is this big, and then you're bound. They were
Right.
yellow at one time. I'm forgetting what they're called now exactly, but they're
There
you
were
know
legal
s-
lines, I remember, not to call
yes.
out any particular ones, but
uh,
right. There were the nutshells, there were,
yeah.
right, yeah,
Mhm.
all these
Mhm.
various types of, yeah, I know what you're talking about. The horn
Yeah.
books,
Yes, and to basically get you through. um and it's just, it was a whole different world for me. I kind of went in thinking that I'd go work for one of these six-figure law firms, and I, wear Armani suits and, um,
right.
do all that. And then I got into that world, and I was like, that sounds miserable. I just can't imagine doing that.
I, Jamie,
Uh,
I see you. Yeah, the American Psycho, right? Wall Street
yes.
lawyer. You would have been perfect. Armani
Oh,
suit, causing
um,
stomach crunches in the morning.
uh, and so like I went to go visit a friend of mine down in Miami, and he's an attorney, and at the time he was an attorney at Greenberg Traurig, which is one of the big firms.
Huge ones, yeah,
Um,
multinational.
started here in Florida originally, and now is everywhere. It's not one of the big ones, but it's up there. And we're taking his dog to the dog park, and he's doing work on his work laptop at the dog park while supposedly hanging out with me and taking his dog. Like, I just, and that when you work for one of those really big firms, yeah, you might make six figures, but they own you. You know, you
That's
are working crazy hours to be able to bill the amount of
right.
hours that they need. Um,
And Jamie, that's where I wanted to kind of
mhm,
follow up, if we
mhm,
can, and then we'll take a break for part two.
yeah.
But I want to
Okay.
follow up a quick question, a segue into your legal career.
Okay.
You have given us the inside out picture of your time at
Mhm.
Northwestern. I really appreciate pros and cons.
Yeah.
The working for the big law firm, you've seen your colleagues, do that, and we understood now it's $300,000, right? Sometimes to get a legal career. Um,
Yeah.
Tell us about your legal career and coming from Northwestern, right? With that
Mhm.
very, if you don't mind me saying so, that's a quite advantageous background to have on your
Yeah.
resume, right?
Yeah. I mean, so I kind of struggled in law school. Like, what do I want to do? What do I want to
Yeah.
do? You go in, you think, yo, I'm going to go work for one of those big firms and make a lot of money. And then you get there and you're like, oh, that sounds miserable. Like, I have people who I know who love it, who think, who really are well adapted to it. Um, but it's a hard system, and the way it's set up and everything like that, it can be very difficult for people to do. And it just sounded absolutely miserable to me. So then I was like, well, what do I do. And then I was like, do I go work for the government? And, I also graduated at a very rough time to graduate. People who were supposed to go to those big firms were having their offers of employment revoked at that time. So you enter your last year of law school, you think that you're going to start in the fall making $160,000 at your law firm in San Francisco or New York, and you find out, no, you're not. Or they were being delayed 6 months to a year to be starting. Um, so then you have to, what am I going to do for those 6 months? Um, and then so forth and so on. Governments were making cuts as well. And then I had interned for Gulf Coast Legal Services my first summer in Team 1L and 2L. Um, Back home in Sarasota, and did that and had gotten familiar then with the different organizations. So then I got a fellowship to be at Legal Advocacy Center for my second summer, got paid,
Always nice.
which is sometimes not the case with a lot of internships, and you're really expected to do internships at a lot of these schools, and sometimes they're not paid. Um, so I did that, and then kind of came out, and they had an opportunity open, and because they had gotten some money through the Obama era stimulus um, plan, they had partnered up with a Center for Independent Living, which helps persons with disabilities, and so I kind of fell into that and did that for a couple years. I don't have great things to say necessarily about that first job. It was really, really tough, kind of trial by fire. I learned a lot of things, but um,
Jamie, it sounds like, but
yeah.
again, like I said, you're passionate about civil
Hmm.
rights,
Hmm.
and I'm guessing disability,
Yeah.
indigent rights as well, right?
Well,
Um, do you think
it
it was one of
was,
that first legal job, where you get your foot in the door, right? You
yeah.
get the experience, and then you're
Yeah.
that much more also
Oh,
marketable?
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's the biggest hurdle. And, for people who are coming out and all the struggles that there are with the market to get jobs, I think it's not that there aren't legal jobs out there in some ways. It's just they don't want to hire new grads a lot of the times in a lot of these jobs. So it's like I can do those things. And like sometimes it's like not even the way it's worded, it's like you don't even need legal experience. But, then they don't really want to hire you. You know, but it's like, how do I get experience?
Jamie,
So,
oh,
it was some of that was just growing pains as an attorney and,
it,
learning a lot.
I just had a quick follow-up question because of what you're
Hmm.
saying. Were you able to make a living? You were doing, right?
So,
Um,
okay,
in
so
terms of paying back loans and all those things you were talking
very, very tough. And I just got very lucky. And I'm very lucky that I have a family who's really supportive, and just some things happened that kind of fell together in the right way. But it would have been very difficult for someone who did not have those advantages, and I don't discount that. So I graduated Northwestern with some. I don't even know the exact amount of what the loans were. I couldn't tell you. I can't even tell you exactly how much I still owe. I don't like to think about it.
Yeah,
Like
right, right. No, I
I look at
understand.
it
It's
all the
painful.
time,
Right.
but it changes every day because that interest adds up. So, but it was almost $200,000. And
Yeah.
so at that time, Grad Plus loans did not exist. So students who would be graduating now would be in a little bit more of an advantageous position than what I was. But I had a lot of private loans because that's what you did. You maxed out your Stafford loans, which now is not available to grad students. But at the time they were, excuse me, and then you take out private loans to cover the rest. So I had private loans that were on a very strict 10-year repayment period, which was the vast majority of, which was like two-thirds of that.
Jamie, how did you survive all of this time?
Um, So my law school offers $15,000 a year, at least at the time. I don't know what it is now, in a loan repayment assistance program. That's how I survived. If that would not have been available, plus at the time there had been some things to make positions like at the Legal Advocacy Center of Central Florida, which no longer exists, but was the partner agency, the Community Legal Services of Mid Florida, which is still around. Um, you know, to make working in public service more um, advantageous. So the starting salaries were a little bit higher, but I think it was like 47.5 once I started shortly before I became a member of the Florida bar, and once I got sworn in, it went up to that. Um, and so they had that, plus, 15,000 with no taxes coming out of it. This is loan
Oh yeah,
repayment assistance.
right.
So
That helped bridge the gap, in other words, during
yes.
that time
Oh,
period.
yeah.
Well, thanks.
There's no way I think I would have been able to do it on just what I was making, without that loan repayment. And at the time, Florida Bar Foundation, which helps to fund a lot of legal services organizations with interest on lawyers' trust accounts, did offer loan repayment assistance. Since the real estate market crashed, there's not as much interest on lawyers' trust accounts as there used to be. So I'm not sure what they're offering currently, but they did offer that at that time. I didn't take advantage of that, but that would have been something,
No,
because I already was getting loan
I
repayment.
I'm glad you gave a shout out to that
Mhm.
because people always ask, including attorneys, where's all that money go on the IOTA accounts and things, and I'm like, great question. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Went to 80% of my
I,
salary was covered, by that Obama stimulus grant with the partnership, or no, I think it was like 75% was covered with that partnership, and then the Florida Bar Foundation covered the rest. Um, and they do a lot of funding of different organizations, but it was a lot of like mortgage foreclosure defense, and the work I did in partnership with the Center for Independent Living, it was any legal issue, civil legal issue potentially that a person with a disability would have. So it wasn't necessarily civil rights oriented,
oh,
that there was
gotcha.
some
Okay.
civil rights,
Yeah.
um, the ADA and Rehabilitation Act sort of stuff, but it was landlord tenant, and we worked to expand a guardian advocacy program over in that circuit so that parents would be able to do that for their developmentally disabled children with having a packet and different things to make it easier for them. Um, in that particular circuit at that time, and just different, like lots of different things. And I've not really had the luxury in my career to specialize in any one thing. So I always say I can be a little bit dangerous. I know just enough to get myself in trouble about a lot of different things.
No, Jamie, I think I mean your talents. We need about 10 hours of
Sorry,
interview
I
time
couldn't hear
here.
what you
I'm
said.
gonna in fact, yeah, I know how busy you are too. I tell you, at this point, what
Hmm.
I'm going to do, and I'm going to leave it here because we're going to come
Yes.
back. I want to hear about your experiences at UCF Student Legal
Okay.
Services, and you could actually do a shout out because we do a lot of similar type things in both programs,
Okay.
right? But I'm going to have
Yes.
it come from you. I'm
Okay.
going to take a quick break as
Okay.
a lot of people know. I'm going to take a quick break to wash my hands, and we will be right back for that cliffhanger to find out where you're at in your career. Okay.
All right.